Welcome to the Rivera family vlog, homeschooling vlog. Today we're not talking about homeschooling. We actually are talking about Meniere's disease because we got a question about that.
We've had several questions from various people.
My husband has Meniere's disease and it's been a journey, and we're gonna talk a little bit about how we found out. And
it sounds worse than it actually is. Like they put the word disease at the end of it.
It's pretty bad though.
It is, but it's not like I'm gonna, don't touch me. Oh my goodness,
it's deadly. It's
I'm
not
gonna catch Meniere's disease.
Well, it's not contagious. It's genetic.
Yes.
But I think everything kind of started, or we noticed something when you were doing the photos for
that was years
our
ago.
Friends, and we were doing like outdoor photos.
Yeah, I
and
took some pictures from some friends.
Had some tea that morning, which is caffeine. If you have Meniere's, no caffeine.
Yeah.
And he just started getting very nauseous and dizzy and
throwing up, and we linked it to dehydration at the time.
We thought it was dehydration, but then it really got bad right after our second born was born, and that was in 2020 when you couldn't get a doctor.
Yeah, so 1 month after our second born, 1 month right after, I started all of a sudden get very nauseous, dizzy, getting vertigo, like just random throughout the day. And so that would actually make me lie down, and I had to like lie down and just nap for like 2-3 hours in the middle of the day. And then after that, started trying to figure out like what this was, because we didn't know. And so I went through all different types of specialists and
it was hard getting an appointment because it was in the middle of lockdown.
Yes.
It was February 20th,
yes,
2020 through April 28th.
That was our wedding anniversary.
Our wedding anniversary through our firstborn's third birthday.
Yes.
Is when he had vertigo for that entire time.
Yep.
So it was brand new to us. We had never heard of Meniere's disease before. Until
that was
he
diagnosed by our
finally got a
ENT.
doctor's appointment with an ENT.
Yes. And actually, eventually I got it confirmed by 2 other ENTs, and they all told me the same thing, apparently. So how did they figure that out? Because it was basically a lot of fullness in my ear, specifically my left ear. So I'm partially deaf in my left ear. And so from that, they eventually said, no ringing in my ear. Some people may have ringing, but they said no ringing. And so they kind of started saying, let's figure out some things. I mean, I did x-rays, I did scans, I did all types of stuff. Eventually, I actually went through physical therapy, and they did something called vestibular therapy as well, which helps with balance, because apparently a lot of people have issues with balance as well. And then because I even tried some homeopathic remedies that we tried, you probably link them as well. So I wasn't sure what was working, but I just threw everything at it. And so through everything, eventually it was like, okay, the ENT basically said there's 4 things that cause Meniere's, or that cause it to flare up and to give you these problems. And so one of those, basically it's called CATS. So caffeine, and again, like Nikki said, so chocolate, even though we're vegan, so dark chocolate obviously still has caffeine in it. I don't drink coffee, but tea, that has caffeine as well. Then the other one's alcohol. I don't drink, but alcohol flares it up as well. Then tobacco, I don't smoke or use anything, but that flares it up. And then lastly, it was salt. And so one of the things I asked, because it literally happened 1 month after our second born, was I wasn't sleeping a lot because you have a newborn. So with the newborn, it was like, being up late, working late and late hours in the early mornings, and then not sleeping as much, and then back up the next day. And after 30 days, my body was like, I'm done. And so that's where, that affected that. But then again, going back to CATS, so the S was actually not just sleep, but it was sodium. And so I was like, great, being vegan, we eat a lot of processed stuff and all that. And so
we weren't healthy plant-based vegans at that time.
We were vegan more than plant-based.
We've gone on a journey to become more plant-based and less processed.
Yeah, so the difference is vegan eats a lot of stuff that's packaged too. So plant-based eats a lot more natural stuff.
Vegan can. It doesn't have to be.
Correct.
But
and so that's where eventually
you can be vegan and eat Oreos and French fries, but that's not going to make you healthy.
Yeah. And chips and all that stuff too.
Yes.
And so eventually we got better, after doing physical therapy and everything. And I'm like, I don't know what worked. And so we're actually great until our third born. And so
yes, and then it happened again.
Yes, 1 month actually exactly after our third born started happening again. And the same thing with my sleep and all that. And I didn't realize, what else it could be. Trying to find answers again.
Stress.
Went back. Yes.
Not eating properly because you're tired and
and so
you don't care, you just grab something.
Yep, and so I went back to the ENT, and the ENT was like, he went back to the things again and reminded me what CATS was, and I'm like, okay, I don't do caffeine unless it's chocolate, so I had to cut that out.
He was still eating a little bit of chocolate, and he was
Or drinking tea with caffeine.
No, but you hadn't really, but you had not fully given up salt yet.
I completely forgot about the sodium. I kind of just, ignored it. And so the alcohol still didn't drink, no tobacco or anything, but the sleep and the sodium. So going back, sleep. My body only sleeps so many hours. I was sleeping more, and eventually my body was like, okay, I've had enough sleep. But really, the main thing that we ended up finding out is that it is sodium. And so there is sodium in everything, and things you don't really realize. And so I was actually like, even if you take pretzels, so like 9 pretzels of these, not anything specific on the brand, but 9 pretzels is 21% of your daily value. Right? So if you eat like 18 pretzels, that's already 42%, almost just under half of what you're supposed to eat in sodium for the whole day. And I mean, how many people, just eat 9? You eat a whole bunch of pretzels, different sizes, whatever it is.
And now that he has Meniere's, he can't even have that much.
Yes.
That's way too much for him.
And so other things, even like pita chips, which again, we have as vegans. So again, 8 chips is 11%. Right, 11%, that's like a huge amount. So I had to start doing things that didn't. And then we would add salt to everything. So whether it was regular salt, whether it was sea salt, we did all this. But even then, like, if you look at this, 1/4 of a teaspoon, 1/4 of a teaspoon is 26%. And so if you had if you add 1 whole teaspoon, that's over 100% of your daily value. Right, so when you let 104%, so right there, 1 whole teaspoon, and you eat something that has that, and most days you're like, oh yeah, a little bit more salt, you don't really measure like I didn't, and so that obviously added and created a lot. But then even things like I would make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, so I started cutting out the salt. I'm like, I'll make peanut butter and jelly. Well, each slice of bread has 5% of your daily value. 2 slices is 10. Add some peanut butter, which has more sodium too. They're like at 15, 18%. Thankfully, Jelly does not have sodium, so thankfully...
He's very thankful for that, and I've had to start making him bread without salt.
Yeah, so initially when she started making bread, Nikki was actually
No, that wasn't bread.
Oh, it wasn't bread.
Okay, so I started a sourdough discard, which I did in one of my videos. I showed that. But I was making different recipes with the discard, like pancakes, banana bread, waffles.
Yes, banana bread.
They all had baking powder and baking soda, and I did not look to see if those had
all of a sudden I'm eating all of this. I'm like, oh man, thankfully, she's making this homemade stuff. We're doing great, and I'm feeling good. But all of a sudden, I start getting like this nausea, and like, I start moving slow, and then like vertigo just kicks in. I'm like, what in the world is going on?
And I don't know what's going on because I'm like, I'm not adding salt to anything.
Yes, but she was adding baking powder and baking soda. And when you look at baking powder, baking powder, 1/8 of a teaspoon of baking powder is 2%. So if you had a whole teaspoon, that's 16% of your daily value. Well,
and pancake recipe took 1 to 2 tablespoons.
Or I thought you did 3 tablespoons.
No, I did 1 tablespoon.
Okay,
I think I've only done 1.
Yeah, so 1 tablespoon, which is 3 teaspoons. So right there, that's 3 times the 16. So right there at 64% of your daily value. And I was just every hour. That's one thing I tried doing too, was I started separating my meals. So I ate small portions every hour. And
that was the first thing he did back in April 28th, 2020 to kind of regulate things, is he had small portions every hour.
Yes. And so that kind of helped. But even with the sodium, when you add, I was just like every hour, like, eating 3-4 pancakes, I'm like, okay. And then throughout the day with, 64%, and it's like, all of a sudden that started adding up. I'm like, why in the world? And when she looked at it, she's like, oh my goodness, we didn't know baking powder had sodium. Baking soda, like everything, almost everything, and then I was having pasta. And with pasta, you add the pasta sauce. Well, half a cup is 18%. If you use a whole container, which is 5 servings, that right there is basically 90% of your daily value if you have spaghetti.
And he could put away pasta, so he could eat an entire...
Yes. And so right there, you're just like killing yourself from adding all this sodium at one time. And so we had to start looking at it. Thankfully, raisins have very little sodium. Okay, so raisins, jelly, I mean, you could pretty much not really live off of it, but anyway.
He makes oatmeal in the morning, and he puts bananas and almond butter from
which has
Costco
no sodium.
that has no sodium.
Yes, almond butter and which
raisins.
is the other nut butter as well. So those don't have sodium.
Yes, they have like a mixed nut butter with a bunch of like Brazilian nuts, all different things, and they don't put any salt in it.
But we had to start cutting out all these packaged stuff that we did as vegans. Yeah. Because I mean, again, like if you look at it,
like the fake meat stuff.
Yeah. So like 4 nuggets. Sodium. 4 nuggets is 13%. Even if I had, every hour 4 nuggets, that right
he's
there.
He's Hispanic. There's no way he's only having 4 nuggets.
Yeah, because you don't just
the whole bag.
And then you have to add some salt to it, right? Of course, after that. But looking at it again, we had to start cutting all that stuff, doing stuff more natural. Now, what I did notice is that every now and then, maybe like once a month, because we have our dates that we do, once a month if we go out, I can have a little something with extra salt for that day. But then the rest of the day, I have to kind of watch what I do. Right?
And drink plenty of water.
Oh, so that was one thing that I never hydrated. Like if I drank
if he drank an ounce of water a day.
Yes, 1 ounce was like my whole water for the day. So one of the things is that water helps flush it out, the extra salt out of your system. They also said exercise helps, so kind of sweating. But if you're sweating, you got to make sure you stay hydrated. So
yeah, if he sweats too much, he also gets vertigo.
Yes.
So he has to really watch the hydration.
Yeah. So I actually like staying in air conditioning, so that's another reason, I get to be inside too, because I do like being inside. But because of the Menieres, I also try not to be outside too long, because then I sweat more, but then I got to stay more hydrated. So anybody that knows me, I carry these Gatorade bottles around.
Because that's 32 ounces, so two of those a day.
So I got to drink at least 2 of these a day, which is half of my body weight. Sometimes like today, this is my 3rd one already. I got to go to 4, but just
we were outside today, so he had to replenish.
Yeah, so I got to drink a lot of water because I didn't drink a lot of water before. But yeah, so staying constantly hydrated, making sure I sleep enough. Because again, most people are like, oh yeah, I can push myself 4 hours. Eventually your body's like, I'm done. But the main thing that happened was sodium. And so we had to keep an eye on everything, cut back, start making stuff. And that's really the main thing that we found. So
one way we flushed out all that sodium when I was baking all that stuff with the baking soda and baking powder is I made him like hot water with just squeeze lemons into it. And you can sweeten it with some honey, and that like sucks a lot of that water weight out. We learned that when we were engaged, and his sister used to work for a company called Quick Weight Loss, and they would have their clients.
We're not promoting companies, by the way.
No, but
not promoting the chips, but just when
we before our marriage, to like make sure we weren't bloated on our wedding day, we just drank a ton of hot water with lemon, and it sucks all that water weight out. So it helps if he has a lot of sodium just to have that lemon tea.
Yeah, so that ties back to what Meniere's actually is, because Meniere's, what ends up happening is that my ear retains too much fluid, and it is hereditary, so it gets passed down to the family. So that's why we also want our boys to not do so much of this packaged stuff, but actually do more of the plant-based, more stuff that's natural and stuff like that, because it's hereditary. And so my ear retains too much water, too much liquid, and that sodium in there helps it retain even more liquid. So what happens is that it throws my inner ear off of balance, and it's like, whoa, and then I just start moving.
He's also lost some of his hearing in that ear permanently.
Yep. And so again, I had also lost a lot of weight from it as well, because like, oh man, I don't want to eat because I was throwing up, and it's like, oh man, you don't feel so great because of the nausea and that constant vertigo. You're like, oh, and so obviously it was hard on the family, and so that's what ended up happening. But thank God for the answers that we're able to get for that, and obviously it's been a whole life change. It's not just, oh yeah, do a little here or whatever. It's it's had to change our entire diet, and so I rather do that than risk basically dying, because it has happened where the first time it happened was I was driving actually from our office, driving home in Weston, and I was driving home, boom, it just happened, and I'm like, well, I had to pull over on the side of the road, and then that's when we started kind of trying to figure all this out.
So it could be dangerous, obviously, if you get vertigo while you're driving and stuff. Yes. And I would have to pick him more than once. I had to pick him up, or my mom had to pick him up on the side of the, parked on the side of the road or in a parking lot somewhere.
Yeah, I pulled into a parking lot. I was actually talking to somebody at Costco and recently, and we just happened to get on that conversation. Like, oh yeah, I have the same thing, and he has to pull up on the side of the road, and it affects him with work and all that. He's like, oh, I'm gonna run late because I had to pull over, and before I get there. And so there's actually a lot of people that deal with this, and when you naturally look at it, you're like, well, yeah, because everything has tons of sodium in it. Of course, it tastes great. And so I've had to adapt my taste buds. So now if I ever have anything that has salt, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is salty. It might be a little bit of salt. You're like, that's not a lot of salt. But because you now kind of flush it out of your system, now is when you realize how salty stuff is, and you start looking at all the labels before. So we used to look at the labels only for vegan stuff. Now we got to also look at it for sodium. So it is,
and caffeine.
And caffeine too. So I really don't have chocolate anymore, but
I have all the chocolate. The chocolate comes to me.
But again,
I love chocolate.
So we plan. So I package. I put meals prepared like Nikki said. I make oatmeal. I package. I get like 3 meals out of it with fruit and all that. That takes me throughout the day. Or eating more fruits, apples, oranges, bananas. Bananas are actually very good to help.
The potassium helps balance out the sodium.
Correct.
And magnesium too.
And magnesium. Yep. So again, another thing that I thought, because I wasn't hydrated, I used to do liquid IV, Well, liquid IV has a ton of sodium as well. So
The liquid IV helped just until you got fully hydrated,
Yes.
and then once you were, then it stopped helping, and it started making it worse.
Yeah, because the electrolytes and all that, but the sodium amount is so high. So again, had to go to just water and basically staying hydrated with water. But yeah, you can add lemon and all that like she was doing as well. So that's kind of our story. That's what's really helped is cutting that sodium. It may be hard, but I can tell you it's worth it. So
Like if you're starting to get symptoms, start flushing or start hydrating depending on what you've been having going on throughout your day.
yeah.
All right, so that's our Meniere's story. Like and subscribe. Most of our journey is about homeschooling, but maybe as we go on this journey to get the package process out and make more natural foods at home, we can share some things that we're doing.
It'll create a better homeschool experience when everybody's healthy.
Yeah, because now the kids are learning like about sourdough and stuff, and they get to see me feed it and like what it looks like and everything. We call it the gremlin because it just like keeps growing. You feed it and water it, and it just grows and reproduces.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Have a great day.
See y'all
Bye.
later. Bye.